Leiho mean? Does it have any significance?
Leiho means how are you in Cantonese, and that actually goes back to the mental health program that we started at the beginning for the first 4 years. Honestly, I had to learn this a very hard, like very, very hard way. I didn't realize how much Leiho was actually taking over my life. Like it was literally a good 90 like to 100% of my life, and then friends, family, whatever that was kind of left over. Especially purpose driven in terms of social impact, when you're working with vulnerable communities, it's very complex, and I think it's not something that you can just do out of the whim because you feel like it. It's like it has to be a part of you, because otherwise I don't think it's going to survive very long.
So is it a blessing or a struggle to have a co-founder?
We struggled a lot with Leiho at one point because we were trying to strategize the business, and it was at a breaking point where we kind of wanted to give up, and we just had no idea, like, it just feels so exhausting, and we were so burnt out. And then after that, I think that creates like a bit of a clash.
Many startups and businesses today are looking for funding. So I wanted to ask you, what would you wish any new entrepreneur to know in this area that you didn't when you started? Any piece of advice?
Biggest challenge always for us was the kind of cash flow, and just like bootstrapping is a huge challenge itself. So I would say that would be our biggest challenge. How to overcome it is
Joey, I'm very happy to welcome you to the Shades of Life podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. I feel like this was a long overdue catch up.
Yeah.
So
Definitely long overdue catch up. So Joey, since actually last time we met, I've created Scarlet Red Mag and the Shades of Life podcast. And one of our pillars is wealth creation, or creating abundance. So it has more to do with work. And as we know, abundance can come in many forms. So you are the co-founder of Leiho, a business that is very purpose-driven and aims to give back, as we will see through this conversation. So first question for you, why is purpose and philanthropy so core to you? Because it really is. Where does it stem from for you?
okay, so good question. I always try and figure this out. I think it comes a lot from, I guess, my background and growing up. I was born in Singapore, and then I moved to Hong Kong and went to school there. Then, like halfway through my teenage years, we then went to LA for a little bit and back to Hong Kong. So I kind of grew up experiencing and living in major kind of big cities. There was a lot of structural inequality. I saw a lot of kind of that divide and just dog eat dog world at a very young age. And I think, at especially when you're like at your curious age, discovering, loads of different things and trying to learn and understand a lot about the world, I think I became really curious as to what, I guess, path I wanted to create and like how I can make it more meaningful. Then I went to university, and yeah, I just started getting involved in a lot of projects that were, I guess, social enterprise related. And I think that kind of like shaped a lot of, my philosophy in terms of doing something good and being a part of something that's purposeful. And my kind of purposeful job journey started like literally straight after uni. And so I think, yeah, I was very curious as a young kind of student or teenager about the world and just making the world a better place for a lot of people in need. And yeah, I think that comes a lot from seeing that at a young age and really wanting to do something about it. So
yeah, really interesting. So some businesses today create a lot of money, but as we know it, sometimes it can come at the detriment of people and planet. Some businesses are also very purpose-driven like yours and are dedicated to giving back to people and planet. But sometimes these ventures struggle to make money. So I wanted to ask you, where does Leiho sit today? Because it's been a little while that you've created this business.
yeah. So good question. I think it's such like a new way of thinking and working. Like I feel like even though social enterprises aren't really new anymore, it's still very new in this kind of like, yeah, I guess like the century and world. And I think, there's a lot of challenger brands now that are doing amazing things in terms of being purpose driven, environmentally friendly. But the biggest issue is the kind of profit side of things. So I would say when we first started, it was very smooth sailing. Like, I think we saw ourselves as a brand, not necessarily a social impact brand. And I think that helps because you're leading with the customers and the people that, and you're connecting with people on a very kind of personal level. As we scale, because impact is so embedded in our kind of like core purpose, I think it becomes really hard on the profit side because you're trying to make a difference, but also trying to be financially sustainable as well. So I would say, like, completely transparently, like with Leiho, we had a very nice kind of smooth process, and then we definitely struggled a lot last year and kind of the year before as well. This year it's kind of like a wake-up call of, okay, right, we really need to like get the business back up and, you know, figure out and re-strategize and restructure. And I think that's why there's a lot of pause on, I guess, our operations at the moment. We've been doing like a lot of accelerators and trying to re-strategize everything because I think it's really hard to compete in the market, especially because we kind of built the business around the impact. So, you know, it's not just a product that we can sell, it's the people that our beneficiaries we promise, you know, our mission to and all of that. So yeah, I would say where we stand is in the kind of recovery, but it's still, you know, a constant roller coaster. Like, I think it's never going to be like, you know, completely profitable. We're never going to be like completely down. I think there'll be phases where it goes up and down. So I think it's learning to manage all of that as well, and to be creative with the way you survive. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I actually think that's really important to be down to earth with the phases of a business, because there are years when you can be in growth and increase a lot, and years when it can also be due to outside circumstances when you can be down, and then it's how do you react to it to keep your business afloat. So yeah, that's really interesting. So, what is the birth story of your business? How did you decide to create it?
So, oh, birth story is really long. Long story short, I would say, so I went to Newcastle University to study. Undergrad, I did media and communications, and then I moved to London, and that was about 2018, 2019. And I was struggling a lot mental health wise, and just had like a lack of self-confidence. I feel like a lot of women kind of can relate. And I think, you know, I wanted to do something that would help other women and other girls like me. So there's one thing that a lot of us have in common is that we all love jewelry. So I started this kind of side project. It's almost like Etsy, but it wasn't, I didn't put it on Etsy. It was on my own website, but I basically handmade loads of necklaces customized with people's names on them. So it would be like, for example, it'd be like all your favorite colors in a bead, and then it would say like Ingrid, or I would have like, yeah, like different types of words and stuff that meant something to people. But it started off as a pay it forward system, pay it forward system, I think it's called, where you basically buy a necklace, and then that necklace is basically, you're basically paying for the next customer's necklace, and it's like paid forward. And then also everyone was able to write notes for each other. So like if you were buying for someone else, it means your necklace is already paid for, but then you'd be writing a note. So each customer would be passing on a note to the next girl. And those messages were so amazing and so sweet and so nice. Obviously, that's a very nice small business. To scale that was so hard. I made 250 necklaces on my own, and I was like, this is too much. But yeah, so pay it forward kind of concept I loved. I loved that business model, and I was like, why does it not exist? So then I wanted to replicate the same thing with men suffering from mental health issues. And so we thought, okay, maybe socks would work. So I found my co-founder Thuta, and we decided to test this kind of like sock pay it forward system. And it was called Gentlemental Socks. It was an ideation phase for about 4 months. And then after that, it quickly failed. Like, it was two girls trying to do primary research with men who had mental health issues. Like, you can imagine, that's just like they weren't giving us anything. So yeah, that quickly kind of crumbled, and we were like, right, you know, like there's something actually quite interesting about socks because it's such a personal item, but also like everyone wears it. And the kind of core purpose was, even with the necklaces, it's that messaging piece and that business model that kind of like, it's not necessarily the product, it's literally the message that comes with it, and knowing that, you know, this has helped support someone in need, or this has helped cheer someone up. So I fell in love with that kind of concept of how I kind of replicate that, and or like put that into a brand. And so my co-founder and I did a bit of research, and we found out that clean socks were one of the most requested items of clothing at homeless shelters. So we were like, okay, win-win. You buy a pair of socks, you give another. And at the time, there were so many buy one, give one sock companies, but we thought this was like such a good way to start and to learn and to navigate around that kind of like philanthropic business side of things. So yeah, we learned a lot. And the buy one, give one model only lasted about 4 months. And then we pivoted into donating like loads of essentials, upskilling, workshops and stuff. For what it was when it started, it was really nice just to be able to, yeah, kind of learn about the impact as we go. So very like experiential. So yeah, that's where the business started.
Nice story. I love the stories of pivoting as well, because you see that often people who start to create their first business and it doesn't work, and you create something else and it might not work, but it might lead you to the thing that works.
Yeah, for sure.
So what does Leiho mean? Does it have any significance?
So Leiho means how are you in Cantonese. And that actually goes back to the mental health brand that we started. It's called Gentlemental Socks, and we're like, okay, to actually scale this business, we're like tied to socks and men's mental health. But we were like, okay, if we actually wanted to expand the product line in the future or do other things, like we were stuck with Gentlemental Socks. So we're like, okay, let's think of a new brand name. And I grew up in Hong Kong. My parents are from Hong Kong. And so Leiho means like, how are you? Are you good? It's like a nice greeting when you see someone, you say like Leiho. And so, yeah, I thought, okay, actually, there's a really nice message to that. Leiho means, how are you? Are you good? That is so simple. And that's something that, you should be able to ask someone who's struggling. Just a simple 3 words and to show that you care. So, yeah, that's kind of the backstory of it. And I think with the pivot to what Leiho is today, it's still like completely relates. It's that kind of like caring, and that kind of like human to human element of it. So yeah.
Yeah, I love the story behind the name. It's lovely. I know what to say now if I go to Hong Kong. So regarding the products that you sell, I wanted to ask you, are they sustainable? Is it something you have integrated in what you do?
Yeah, so when we first started Leiho, we were looking at loads of suppliers, speaking to loads, and because a cost of it goes into the social impact, we were doing good in people's lives. We were like, well, we can't be doing damage in the environment. So we had to do a bit of research. And when we first started, like bamboo was a bit of a hype, but also it wasn't really something that I guess was popular. And so we did a bit of research and we thought, if we're going to be doing something good for people, yeah, we have to do something good for the environment. So we had a look and we started with bamboo socks. Now we have organic cotton caps and organic cotton socks as well and t-shirts. So definitely moving more into eco-conscious products. I don't like to say sustainable at all because, with sustainability, it's unless you're literally buying and producing nothing, there's no way of throwing that word around. So I think for us, it's eco-conscious. We're very aware of, the pros and cons of the materials that we use,
Yeah.
but also making sure that we can kind of offset that with the suppliers that we work with. So making sure it's ethical, it's like kind of small factories. We visited our main factory in Turkey, and also, yeah, just making sure they have the right certifications and understanding what those certifications actually mean. I think for a year we were like, yeah, we're aesthetic certified. We're like, yeah, we've got Ocotex, but actually we didn't have any idea what they actually meant. So now it's every kind of supplier or factory we work with, we make sure like we actually understand what it means. um, I did a talk recently on sustainability in business, and I was really scared because, I think for me, like Leiho wasn't born a sustainable business. It wasn't because of us wanting to save the world or the environment,
Yeah.
but like it's still a huge core of our business. So we make sure that we split the two words up, sustain and ability, and it's that ability to kind of, I guess, sustain your values and your mindset of wanting to educate yourself and making sure it's like, it's okay if you don't have everything all figured out on the sustainability angle, but having that kind of like, I guess, attitude of, okay, like, what can I learn from this and how can we adapt the business towards it, I think is how I would describe a good sustainable business, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would say definitely learning on the eco-conscious area, and still lots to learn.
Yeah, I love that. I love being open to learning and educating yourself. I have this conversation with people often that, even if you put sustainability at the core of what you do, being 100% sustainable is kind of almost impossible anyway. So I think we also need to be realistic about that. And try your best. So, what about the philanthropic side of your business? How does it work? Do you support any causes in particular, and how do you select them?
Yeah, so that, I'm like, how do I say that in a short form? I think I'm a very I think with the social impact side of it, I'm very passionate about it because obviously it's something that's so new and raw, but I think it's also like so different for every single charity and every single business. So how we do it is we like to think of ourselves almost like an agency. So when we work with charities, it's very bespoke. So there's no like formula or copy and paste of how we work with charities. It's not like here at the beginning, yes, when we did buy one, give one socks, we gave socks to homeless shelters and stuff. But now it's like we actually partner with charities and we ask what it is you need, or how can we support you, or is there anything that you're lacking that we as a brand can help deliver. And then after that we create campaigns, we create products, and we create things around that. So it's not a handout, it's more of like a let's work together and actually try and figure this out. So I don't really know how to describe that in a business model.
Like tailored approach.
I think it's very bespoke, and I think there's such a stigma in the kind of impact world where you obviously have to measure everything and measure your KPIs and make sure, but it's also like I have this conversation with my co-founder all the time. If you're actually in the industry, you know that impact can't be measured per person as like a whole generalization, because yes, you could say, 100% people felt more confident after a workshop, or 10% of people from, employment projects ended up like here. You can do that, but also every individual's like impact story is different. In terms of our business model, it's 5% of our monthly revenue, and we control what we want to do with the 5%. So it's very much seasonal based. So over Christmas, we do like Christmas related employment projects, or we do like essentials if people really need like warm clothes, especially with the cost of living. And then during the year, we try and find like fun activities for a lot of like mums, or like vulnerable mums who might send their kids off to school but not have a lot of like stuff to do, which then affects their mental health. So it's very much tailored to different parts of the year. And I think because we're still small, we can do that. But yeah, I would say like our business model is the 5%, and like measuring that, or so choosing the causes, is really based on what is really needed out there. We tend to focus on like preventing people from getting into a worst case scenario. So we work with a lot of like vulnerable women, like young people and people at risk of homelessness. And so those are our kind of main categories. And then we try and support them with like anything empowering we like to lead with.
Yeah, that's really lovely to see how focused you are on social impact in particular. I see a lot of environmental focus, but I really love the way you focus on the social part of the equation here. So talking about that, I wanted to ask you, do you know what has been your impact with Leiho so far? I know you produce an impact report every year. So do you have any key figures you could share with us to give us an idea?
Yeah, so when we first started, it was all essentials. So I think we donated up to 20,000 essentials. And then from there, like we still do sometimes. But a lot of it is, like I said, the employment workshops and the like creative stuff that we run. So like a lot of the upskilling. Usually when we run a creative workshop, it's around like 15 to 20 women. And then if it's employment, it's usually around 2 people per kind of employment workshop, just because it's more manageable, but also we then have that kind of like, I guess, like core focus on, making sure that we're making the most of it. So yeah, I would say like with the impact measurement and stuff, we're still trying to figure out how to actually report it, because I can give you 2 stories. It's so hard because, like I said, every individual is different. Like we hired these 2 guys, and one of them was able to use the money to get a national ID. And then we had this other mom that we hired, and she was then able to like support her kids and was able to make us like, buy things that would make her feel a little bit more confident. And there was another one who, she had 5 kids and like she hadn't worked in so long, and her kids were so excited that she actually got a job and she was able to do something. So I think it's that like individual story that you can't really, that we struggle to always like measure and track. But yeah, otherwise those are our stats. We run quite a few workshops, I would say, every year. And yeah, hopefully a lot more next year.
Yeah, that's great. And, every action counts, I think, and makes a difference in the life of someone. So that's great to hear. So you have a partner in business, a co-founder. And when I've seen you working together in the past, I think I've said this to you before, I've been really impressed by how well it works between the two of you. So for people who would be listening to this podcast, thinking of having perhaps a co-founder setting up a business, let's go for a few questions with you about this. So is it a blessing or a struggle to have a co-founder? What has been your experience so far? Can you tell us about the dynamics between the two of you? And do you have any particular ways of sharing the work? So if you can give us an overall picture.
So my co-founder, yes, so Thusha and I met during our masters at City University, and we both met based on a passion of wanting to start a business together. And we kind of, were working on Gentlemental Socks and the Pivot together. So at the very beginning, I would say like it was never kind of like we weren't friends. There was no like relationship. It was just kind of like going straight into co-founding, which I think puts the business first at the beginning, which is quite nice. And then obviously as you start to progress, there's a lot, you work with each other every day and you build a relationship. And I think if you meet Thusha and I, or for anyone who has, we are quite different, but she always puts it very nicely. Like we balance each other out. Our skill sets are also very different, so we balance each other out. And yeah, I would say like it's definitely a blessing because, there's a lot of things that you need to do when you run a business. And I think having an extra pair of hands or even having another like decision maker in the process makes it a lot easier. And we always say a co-founder relationship is like a marriage. It's so crucial to work on it because it's one of those things where you can't point fingers and blame each other, or we can't talk like disrespectfully to each other. Like it's just very important to work on what you need to work on and what they need to work on as well. Everyone has so many different ways of working, and it took us a while to get there for sure. But I think, this year especially, we've come closer than ever because we're both putting in the work to really work on the relationship. And, the business like is always going to be kind of like up and down, no matter how big or small. And I think to find someone who can pick you up when you're down, or, who can come like, as in who can, I guess, go along with you and the journey, if that makes sense, is really important. So yeah, I think we've learned over time to really put our, I guess our big head and big egos behind and really try and make it work together. So yeah, I would say it's definitely like something that you have to work on, and not all co-founder relationships are successful, but I think we've been through the worst that we could. I think it only goes up from here, which is really nice. And yeah, I think we struggled a lot with Leiho at one point because we were trying to strategize the business. And it was at a breaking point where we kind of wanted to give up, and we just had no idea. Like, it just feels so exhausting and we were so burnt out. And then after that, I think that creates like a bit of a clash. But through those clashes, become something stronger if you can get through it. And I think, it's just finding the right partner who can be mature about it and also get through it with you without bringing their own personal, like, I guess, traumas or, anxieties or ways into that picture. So yeah.
Yeah, I really like your analogy to a marriage. I think that's so true. I think you're very right. Sometimes it doesn't work at all and it can break a business. But if you find the right match for you in business, it can be a real blessing. And yes, you will still go through the challenges like in a marriage, for example. But if you find your right match, it can be a real support as well. Yeah, really interesting. So the fact is that you two are both women.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring up that female-founded and female-led startups are becoming more commonplace today, but still only account for a small fraction of startups worldwide. And if we look at 2023 last year, women accounted for just above 13% only of all startup founders. And there is the same gender gap in VC funding as well, and it is quite well known and something that's brought up quite often. So, have you felt that gap yourself? And are you proud to be a female founder and entrepreneur in that context, that there are not so many proportionally overall?
Yeah, so I'll start with the last question first. Absolutely. I think it's such a privilege to be a female founder, especially in this kind of like, yeah, chaotic world at the moment. But yeah, I think it's such a privilege because I think we're at a really nice point where a lot of women are supporting women. There's a lot of women kind of accelerator programs, funds, and just even the Innovate UK, I'm sure you saw all of that online. Like we applied to that, didn't get it, but also it was amazing to see all these women come together and just like support each other and uplift each other and, fight with each other, not with each other, but together. I think it's never, I mean, yeah, I don't think it was ever really like that in the past. So I think it's really nice that we've come to a point where instead of women competing with each other, we're actually working together and really supporting each other. We see each other win all the time. So yeah, I think it's really nice to be a part of that. And in terms of like how we feel, where we feel it, I think Thuja and I never really have, purely because we're in the social enterprise industry. And like I think a lot of women lead with EQ and a lot of social enterprises are actually majority female. So I think we never really had that problem because, a lot of the people in the industry are actually women, especially in ours. But I would say like where we step out of that social impact kind of equation and we're in a room full of other founders and stuff like that, then definitely it's more kind of male dominated. But still, I think living in London, you have a really nice mix. And, it's about, I think we've learned to almost think of it as, we're not we're the only woman in the room. That's actually something we're really grateful for, or that's actually a privilege, or that's actually like amazing and super cool. So we've kind of learned to flip the narrative a little bit. And I think that's really helped because, yes, there are a lot of people who could undermine, what you do or make you feel uncomfortable, or, there's a lot of funds and this very small percentage goes to females, but equally like, us kind of working together can help hopefully tackle and relieve that. And I think, women now are becoming more, I guess, vocal, which is great. So that raises a lot more awareness. So yeah, I think we're in a really good position. There's still so much more we can do, but I think it's nice to be able to celebrate these milestones and to actually appreciate how far we've come and how much more that there is to do. But, to actually understand that it's at a very decent point and, it can get better. And, we all know it. Women are going to rule the world at some point. So it's just all part of that kind of, like, well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think also every time a woman or women build businesses that demonstrate, that works and they are being successful, obviously they set up a path for more women to come after them. There's also probably, as you were mentioning, a kind of mentoring or supportive groups forming more and more. So it's almost like a snowball effect that's becoming bigger and bigger. And yes, we will rule the world. So I think you are very active with pitching your business, looking for grants or mentoring opportunities. Could you tell us what has been your experience in this area? And can you share some key milestones perhaps with us in terms of pitching, grants, mentoring?
Yeah, so pitching wise, we always try and do as many as we can, to be honest, especially the ones that have a prize at the end, because that's always very useful for a social impact business. But otherwise, it's great learning for us. I think we've never actually gone through the investment kind of route yet. It's something that we might be thinking of next year or the year after. We're very much like bootstrap until you can, but I think we're at a point where we're like, okay, we've bootstrapped until we can, and now we actually need a bit of cash injection. Otherwise, we've survived a lot on the bootstrap side of it, and yeah, a couple of grants. We've had some micro grants here and there. We actually just received the Big Issue Invest Power Up London program as well. So that's honestly like it came in such a perfect time because we've had a lot of VAT that we had to pay and a lot of things. So I think this was like a perfect time to get the grant. Yeah, I think in terms of milestones, yeah, the first 2 years we got quite a lot of grants and stuff. And then obviously, like as the business grows, grants are so time intensive. It's like days as well sometimes. Like even the Innovate UK took so long. And yeah, just these applications are so lengthy and tedious that sometimes it's like, we need to be working on the business. So yeah, we've definitely applied to less over the past 2 to 3 years, but like this year we're starting to apply to a little bit more. And then yeah, just testing and figuring out kind of where our feet is. We don't want to be grant reliant because that's not very financially sustainable. And so for us, these grants are just a bit of like a boost up and then we survive without it. We don't really like to rely on it because we're still a business at the end of the day. So for us, it's the kind of like customers and the revenue that we need to be focusing on. But yeah, otherwise, like the grants are super useful and we try and do as many as we can.
Yeah. No, I really like how active you are in this area. And I think, as you mentioned, when you pitch, whether it's for grants or other opportunities, it forces you to be in that mindset of looking at your business. What's my vision? What's my mission? What do we want to offer people? What problem are we solving, etc. And that's a nice process, I find.
Yeah. I think also it's like, it's a really, really nice process because you go back to the scratch board and you re-strategize because sometimes you're working so much on the business. But I also find like when you're doing a lot of those applications, you're like so fixated on like, what is my 3 to 5 year like mission or vision, like in so much detail that you're like, what am I even doing? So I think like sometimes obviously each application is different as well. So then we got to a point where we're doing so many that we got so confused. Like, what are we actually doing as a business? But yeah, I think it is good to do to re-strategize, but also like a healthy amount is good, not too much, because
Yeah.
too much you just get like way too confused and it just becomes like so almost like textbook and yeah.
Yeah, I like that message as well, and still focusing on your business and not being overly reliant on grants. So, many startups and businesses today are looking for funding. So I wanted to ask you, what would you wish any new entrepreneur to know in this area that you didn't when you started? Any piece of advice?
In terms of funding, I would say be mindful and trying to educate yourself about all the alternative ways of funding. So obviously, like when we first started, it was only VCs that we knew. I would say definitely get to know like what angels are, when the right time is, like how much roughly would be like your first round or second round, like as in no one actually tells you those numbers. So I think to be able to educate yourself and ask people and ask other women who've raised as well how much you should be raising for, like those kind of uncomfortable questions that no one talks about. And then I would say, yeah, if it's not grants, if it's not VCs, if it's not angels, then definitely have a look because there's grants and there's crowdfunding and what works for one business won't work for yours. So you need to figure out like what actually works for your business and how you can actually fund it because some businesses maybe might be like grant friendly, but then some other businesses might be more useful for like crowdfunding on the marketing side and things that are a little bit more innovative and out there. So yeah, it depends on the type of business. And I would say definitely having a look and seeing what similar businesses have done and then doing your research and figuring out, what your options are. I'm always a pro kind of bootstrapper because I think I've learned so much that now I'm like, I want to start another business.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
It's one of those where it's like you learn so much that you're like, okay, I know how to buy. But I think it's so useful because even if I don't know, year 5, your business, you give up, you don't want to do it anymore, it doesn't, it's just a kind of closed business, at least you've walked away with so many skills that you can apply in other jobs. And so, yeah, I would say like definitely try and bootstrap if you can. If not, then be creative about it as well and see, you know, if you're raising funds, like how you can also get other people to support your dream and be a part of investing in it. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking, because I started my career, contrary to you, with a corporate job for many years, and then I created my own business many years later. And the amount you learn when you create your own business, I mean, you're going to make so many mistakes, but the amount you learn, it has nothing to do like having a corporate job. And, if someone decides to go back into the corporate world, they are going to have so many skills that somebody was never tried. I would rather recruit someone who has tried rather than not tried. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So you obviously told us about your origins from Hong Kong, which is really interesting, and you are now based in the UK. So I actually wanted to ask you this question because we actually met when we both supported refugee cause in the UK a few years ago. And recently we have seen racism demonstrations in the UK, quite strong ones. And this business we actually supported in the past has been obliged recently to close for a certain period of time. We have also seen the racism demonstrations being quickly followed by anti-racism protests, which was really nice. So I've never asked this question on the podcast before because perhaps it wasn't so relevant. But I wanted to ask you, is it something you ever had to deal with yourself? And what has been your own experience with racism?
Yeah.
And it's not a tricky question at all. It's just curiosity, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say like 100%. So I obviously was born in Singapore and Hong Kong. Went to school in LA and definitely like experienced it. I don't think I knew enough about it to really understand it as racism because I was so young. Like for me, it was just, I was offended by it. I didn't like it. It was rude. It affected me for sure. And I don't think until I was older and actually realized, like, oh, okay, actually, that wasn't okay and that wasn't very nice. So I would say, like, but my biggest lesson in terms of racism is actually just trying to have almost the same mentality as what I said about sustainability, like that openness and willingness to learn and educate yourself and have those open conversations with people. Like it's okay if you don't know, or it's okay if, you once said something and like you had no idea that it was remotely like offensive, but then it's also taking that accountability and apologizing for it. And it's like we're all human at the end of the day. And I think it's being vulnerable with people and being able to really, I guess, admit to like your mistakes or like taking accountability, like I said. But yeah, I've definitely like experienced it a lot when I was in LA, and I would say in the UK, probably, yeah, for sure, quite a bit. But I think I'm also quite like headstrong. So if someone did say something to me, I think I would have a lot to say back. Not in like a racist way, but as in like I would, I think I'm very like headstrong. And I think it's just I'm not afraid to actually tell people like, that wasn't okay, or you shouldn't say that, or call people out. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that. So I think it's about, raising that awareness and making sure that people feel comfortable in like standing up for themselves, but also if you see something that's not right, you stand up for them too. I think I've called quite a few people out in situations that weren't related to me at all, but I noticed and I was like, that's not, So yeah, I guess that's what I would have to say. I would say it's definitely really sad and it's a really hard kind of situation for a lot of people going through it, especially, kind of, yeah, people from like Asian backgrounds and stuff like that living in the UK, because it always feels like the othering, So I think, yeah, it's just one of those where it comes from schools and just educating people and around you as well, and generations. And even if your grandma says something that's not very nice, it's like learning to be able to correct them and tell them that it's not okay. So yeah, I think it's still such like a sensitive and vulnerable topic, but
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. No, thank you. I actually think that's such a lovely answer. And I also wanted to ask you, because obviously you are an entrepreneur, you are creating value, and you are also creating value by helping other people. So I find that really lovely overall. And we can see through your answer how open and caring you are, I think. And I love, sorry, I've just received a weird email. I will cut that out.
It's okay.
Okay, let's move to the next question. Um, okay, so quite an open question to follow. How have you found the experience of creating your own business so far? How would you describe the journey until now, if you had to summarize it?
I would say it's the scariest roller coaster in the theme park that you're unsure of, and you ride it and you know it's scary, but you've survived it. So those roller coasters that go like fast and then reverse and upside down and backwards, like every single direction you could think of, I would say that's been a accurate depiction of what we've gone through. But there's some kind of adrenaline there, and it's like, okay, I did that, now I could ride it again. So yeah, I would say that's how I would describe it. But otherwise, like, yeah, I would say the journey has been everything that I kind of I hoped it would be, and if anything, much better. Like, I obviously there's a lot and a lot and a lot of challenges and obstacles, but I think there's something so nice about seeing those challenges and obstacles as something exciting and hope and a part of your journey. I think before we saw it as like something that was really stressful, and it was like I can't figure it out. Like, what is it? What do we do? How do we do this? What do we even want to do with the business? How do we want to scale it? But now seeing it more as something exciting, like, okay, we don't know, it's okay. And it's like that kind of open conversation, like I said, with the whole racism and sustainability thing, I think it's the same. It's just about being a bit more like level-headed with everyone. Like, I don't know everything, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we've run a business for 5 years. I can tell you about bootstrapping. I can tell you about, how we really, really struggled, but also how we doubled our annual turnover 3 years in a row. Like, there's so many different things that are a part of it. And I think both my co-founder and I have learned to just be really open and vulnerable with people, because people are learning and there's nothing to hide from our side. But I would say, like, it's taught me so much more about me as a person than running a business. And so I think that's a really nice way of like thinking about it, because it's part of my journey. And, I'm so passionate about helping people. Obviously, like, I would love, and I'm hoping to start like some other businesses along the way. And it might not be the same theme, might not be the same business. It might not be like, in the same, yeah, it might not be like product based or social impact business. But I think it's nice to be able to have that kind of like diversity with it. And so, yeah, I think I've learned a lot from it, and I'm really excited for what's to come with the business and where it can go. I feel like it went from like a really good place to just like a lot of struggle, complete burnout, to finally like getting it back on its feet. And now it's back on its feet. I'm like, okay, I'm excited for it to go again. And I know it will probably go down again, but it's just that, like, yeah, that mindset I think I'm trying to
Yeah,
learn.
learning curves. There is a level of comfort that's transpiring from you, which is really nice. I like to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you say has been your biggest challenge since you've started? And do you have any advice or tips on how you have overcome it?
Yeah, biggest challenge always for us was the kind of cash flow, and just like trying to, I mean, bootstrapping is a huge challenge itself. So I would say that would be our biggest challenge. How to overcome it is to be as creative as you can. Like, first year we had 3 sock designs, and in order to release new products or socks, we had to sell them out of them. But for the customers who already bought them, we were like, okay, how can we get them to buy more? It's not like a pack of white socks from M&S that you can wear every day. Designs and different patterns. So you don't necessarily buy like 2 or 3 of each. But we're like, okay, how can we get them to like repurchase and rebuy? So did a bit of research, and we found Christmas sock crackers. And so we turned our same designs into sock crackers, and that in itself was a new product. And I think for us, that helped us sell out all of our like thousands of pairs of socks in less than a year. And I think it's about being super creative with the way that you try and sell your product and connect with customers. And yeah, I think we had to be. It's almost like that survival mode. So I would say definitely, like, if the idea sounds like crazy and silly, and if it sounds like the wildest idea, like that's probably the best one to go for.
Oh, I love that story. Yeah, because sometimes you hit a fork in the road, and then I love how you said you need to be creative and still come up with ideas. And obviously you managed to turn that around. I love that story. So on the other side, because I always love to make things, bring what you do to life and give concrete examples to people. So is there any particular success story you are particularly proud of that you could share with us? Obviously, that's one, I think.
Yeah, success stories. I would say maybe getting into top 100 startups in 2024 this year. I think that was really, I know it's just like an award and it's just like a PR thing, but for us, that was so nice because we were really, really, really struggling at the beginning of the year. So to be recognized for that, it was honestly just a huge honor. And from that, we've had a lot of people contact us for like loads of different things, collaborations and stuff. So I think that was a huge honor because the other brands on the list were like really, really good businesses, like really amazing, inspiring, kind of like purpose-driven businesses. So I think for us, yeah, it was just really, really nice. And I think we never celebrate our milestones. So when we get recognized for any PR, any like awards or anything, it always feels really like just nice. And then it reminds us that we actually do need to celebrate our milestones. So
Yeah, definitely. Always celebrate the small wins. That's a piece of
yeah.
advice I always remember. I also wanted to say, I know that sometimes you win an award or a title like this one, and you think it's a small thing, but in reality, that's something that you've earned and that you can always share again and again in the future. And that can really open doors where you need them to open them as well. So that's really interesting and definitely something not to take for granted. So what are the aspects of what you do that you like the most?
Okay, as in my role, I love the creativity side. I always have. I think when I was younger, honestly, I was like, I look back, I just moved houses, so I'm just staying somewhere temporarily. But I went through all of my memories when I was younger, and it made me so happy because I was such a creative child. Like I literally designed like an igloo hotel, and then I designed a like park of silence, which is literally what loads of cabins now have. I was like, what I want in the future is to design this like land where no phones are allowed, no technology, and people can just like connect. Like I was 9 or 10. And so just I think for me, my favorite part is that creativity thing because I think I still have that inner child in me that is always coming up with silly, wacky ideas that people probably say like, it's silly to do, but yeah, I would say I love the kind of creative side of, working with other charities as well and seeing how we can actually deliver something really nice together that's a win-win for both the brand and the charity. I love that we're moving into the custom branded merch side with Impact. So we're working with a lot of B2B businesses to make their products that they give out to employees, to clients at trade shows a lot more ethical and sustainable. So yeah, I think that kind of B2B side I'm like obsessed with at the moment because I think there's so much potential to tap into that market. And, we've had a lot of B2B clients in the past as well, but those are all organic ones. So I think, it's really exciting to be able to work with them on the business and the brand and try and make it more impactful. And then I would say the whole team thing as well. We're so grateful. We've had so many people come to us organically and just be a part of our business, whether it's volunteer or actually working with us. So I think that's always something that we're super grateful for. And it's nice to be able to have a team. And yeah, hopefully we'll be able to kind of continue and grow our team the next couple of months. But yeah.
Right, yeah, I love the creativity aspect that's so important in a business to keep innovating as well. So you did mention cash flow before, but what other aspects of running a business have you found the most challenging? Really, again, with the idea of giving advice to people who would think of setting up a business.
Yeah, I would say if it's not cash flow, it's definitely mindset. founder mindset, I would say, is a huge thing you need to work on. I started I started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 20, and that was the necklaces. And I think I started it so naive, not like it was just like, not really understanding how like the margins work, or like what like the cost of raw materials and labor and all of that. And it was just very like, like as soon as I sell something, I'm like, yay, I made money. But actually, like I didn't actually know, you don't really think about it. So I think I would say like what you start with at the very beginning, like day one, and I don't know, all the way down to day 365, like a year later, like you would have changed a lot. A lot would have happened, even if it doesn't feel like it. And I think as that progresses, the more your business grows, a lot more pressure on you and the business. I think it's really important to kind of fix that mindset and allow you to have that growth mindset. So a lot of the times, I'm not sure if you know the kind of fixed and growth mindset mentality, but I think I went from a very fixed mindset to growth mindset. And now it's like that kind of keenness and openness to learn and to try new things and to experiment. And it doesn't matter if you're year 5, year 6, year 7. I think if you set your business up for that kind of like ready to pivot, ready to scale, ready to grow, ready to move, then I think that is, I guess, a really safe way of running the business. I think it's really hard when you're so like fixated on like this needs to work, this is the way I do it, it's my way or highway. But I think it's that mentality of putting that ego behind and actually doing what's right for the business, what's right for you, what's right for the team. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love you mentioned mindset. It is so important in every aspect of life, but yeah, definitely when you are an entrepreneur. And I love the being flexible message. That's so key. So founders can be sometimes well known for being overwhelmed and consumed by their business. So I wanted to ask you, how much does your business take from your time, and how do you find balance, seek balance?
At the beginning, for the first 4 years, honestly, I had to learn this a very hard, like very, very hard way. I didn't realize how much Leiho was actually taking over my life. Like it was literally a good 90, like to 100% of my life. And then friends, family were whatever that was kind of left over. I was struggling a lot at the beginning of the year. I had really, really, really bad burnout. I suffered with a lot of like health issues as well. And I think it really kind of like woke me up, and I was like, okay, I actually need to focus on myself. And I have a coach, and she talks me through like the different percentages in life, and she's like, where would you want your percentages to be? Say your partner, your family, your friends, work, dog, like what are the core things in your life, and how do you want to divide the percentages? And I started with work, and I was like, okay, work would be, and then no, it started as 80%. And then after that, I was like, okay, then friends 10%, family 10%. And then I was like, oh, that's already 100%. So then I cut it down to 50%. And I was like, okay, 20% to family and friends. I'm going to group them. And I was trying to rationalize. And what she actually pointed out was, she was like, you allocated all these percentages for friends, family, business, but where's the percentage for yourself? And
Yeah.
I was like I've never had that. I never thought, obviously I started the entrepreneurial journey when I was 20. So like for me, it was always about career, friends, family, and everything else. But I never had that kind of me time. And I think that was causing me so much stress, anxiety, and just not even knowing who I was anymore. So for about a whole year, I would literally go out with my friends or like go for dinner with my family, and I didn't really feel very present, and I couldn't connect with other people because I'd lost so much connection and touch with myself. It was like work, be there with friends, be there with family, and then sleep. Like it was never like I had zero time to myself. And so I also have a dog. So like if it is walking in the park, I'm fixated on my dog. So like yeah, I think it was a huge wake up call in terms of how I allocate that. And I know now there is never going to be a time where work will be balanced with life. And if so, it would only be for a very short period of time. Like sometimes things will happen at family where I have to prioritize that over work. Things will happen with friends, and then all things will happen with work. And I think it's about learning how to manage all of that and understand that, it's never going to be 50-50 ever. And that's not even like heard of. So this whole work-life balance thing people are talking about, honestly, I'm like, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist because you never know what's going to happen. One day you might be, in a relationship, the other day you might not, or one day you might be like, you might lose like someone important to you. It's just like there's a lot of things in life that you can't control, and that affects your percentages and allocation to your business. And I think being able to understand that almost removes that whole like working inside in the business so like, I guess, intensely. And I think that was me. Like Leiho was my life and I had nothing else other than Leiho. So now I'm like slowly trying to regain a lot of me back and learn a lot more about me. So yeah, I would say like it was a really hard lesson and it's a very recent one as well. So yeah, I'm getting a lot of that back and I feel so much more present with my friends and family and just knowing that I need like me time. So yeah, I never had any of that. So it's just one of those.
I think that's such an important message. I actually love the way you looked at it with allocating percentages. I've actually never done that myself. But I think especially when you are an entrepreneur, I think naturally you're going to be in a very driven mindset because you're going after your business, setting it up, making it work, etc. And it's very demanding, obviously. And yes, you're going to have to put extra hours compared to someone who has perhaps a 9 to 5 job. But I find it so important to find balance with other areas of your life. And something that's often overlooked by most people is the me time. I love that you brought that up. So would you recommend to someone to start a purpose with all your experience? Would you recommend to someone to start a purpose-driven brand? And what would be your biggest pieces of advice to them to set up and grow a successful business?
So I would say don't start one if your passion isn't there. If you don't have, I had someone actually come up to me saying like I want to add more meaning into my business. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you passionate about? Is it the environment? Is it people, like mental health? Like there's so many different things. And what kind of I fear the most is people starting purpose-driven brands for the sake of like ticking boxes and, I have to start one. I think start one if you genuinely are passionate about the environment or genuinely are passionate about people, because it's especially purpose driven in terms of social impact when you're working with vulnerable communities. It's very complex, and I think it's not something that you can just do out of the whim because you feel like it. It's like it has to be a part of you, because otherwise I don't think it's going to survive very long. Like I went to watch a talk by Simon Sinek, and he said like businesses are an extension of your personality. And I completely like agree with that. You don't have to be an expert in, I don't know, coding if you wanted to start like, I don't know, an app. You don't have to be an expert in shoes, or you don't have to know every single energy drink brand if you wanted to start like an energy drink company. Like that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that if you're trying to start an energy drink company that, was specialized in like, I can't even think about it, like, I don't know, something along the lines of wellness and stuff like that, but you don't believe in that, and your life is revolved around junk food and crisps and spicy Cheetos, then it's like, it's not going to be sustainable because that's not what you're passionate
Yeah.
about. So I think it's just one of those where it's really trying to find that kind of right balance of, I'm super passionate about supporting people in need. I really want to build a business that does that, but it doesn't mean that every single business, like other business, will do that. So yeah, I think start a purpose-driven brand if that is where your heart is, because that is what will carry you and what will help you survive. Because yeah, it's a really tough industry starting a business. And I think, again, like I said, you don't have to be an expert in it, but if there is some part of you that actually has passion in there, then I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, again, I think that's such a great message. For me, it comes down to whatever you do in life, and it could look very different for very different people. Try to always do something that's aligned with you. Because if you go off a tangent, something, as you say, you don't really believe in, you're just going to waste your time because it's going to feel false to you. Your heart is not going to be in it. And that's such a shame because we have so much time in this life. And I think you're a good example of that you build things over time. So even if you pour your heart into something and it doesn't work, you're still learning and it still takes you to the next step and the next step and the next step. So yeah, that's a really important message. So Leiho was part of Virgin Startup's previous cohort to go back to the scratch board and re-strategize the ways in which you can continue scaling your brand and impact. So congratulations for that, first of all. And I wanted to ask you, what did you learn from this experience? Obviously, Virgin is a very well-known company. They are actually doing a lot to help other people, whether it's businesses or in other areas. So that would be really interesting to hear from you and your experience with them.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I would say like, wow, Virgin's culture is incredible. We got invited to their 10th year anniversary. It was for Virgin Startups, and just seeing how their team kind of communicate with each other, just seeing like what their team was like, honestly inspired me so much. And I'm like, that is the dream team. Like they're all very just passionate about the work that they do and they really believe in it. And they're just part of that kind of like Virgin family. So I was really, really inspired by their kind of team there. In terms of the program, it was amazing. I would say it's definitely one of the best programs we've done, purely because of the team, to be honest, and the community and the other businesses that we had. So yes, the learning was really, really good. And like we learned a lot. It was really helpful in terms of re-strategizing. And I think but it's just like the support that they give you. And after the post-program support as well is like immense. So yeah, I would say definitely like they've got the free community apps, they've got their events as well. So we go to some of their events and it's free for anyone, to be honest. And they have like incredible speakers. We recently went to one of the founder of Neon, my co-founder went to the founder of Grind talk, which is like, these are all incredible brands. And so yeah, it's just amazing that they've given that kind of opened that up free for all for people who actually want to learn, and they really are there to help you succeed. Yeah, it was such a great program, and I'm sad it's over. I'm like, I just loved the program. You felt part of the Virgin family, but we still keep in touch with their teams, so it's nice to kind of still be involved and still do things with them. So yeah.
Yeah, I find it so inspirational to hear from other companies and other entrepreneurs. That's something I love to do as well. You learn so much, and it's very motivating, obviously, for your own entrepreneurial journey. So talking of entrepreneurial journey, how do you see the future of yours with Leo or more?
Yeah. So with Leiho, I mean, kind of going it more in the B2B space is our dream. Like, we have been in the B2C a lot and we still want to hold like a very big part of it, but also like I'm super passionate about working with people as well to make a difference. Kind of goes back to the purpose-driven thing. Like if you are a business and you aren't passionate about that, but you actually want to make a difference, then actually partner with people who are passionate about it. And that's where the small businesses come in. So, when you see a lot of big businesses and they want to tick boxes, it's like, instead of ticking boxes and doing it yourself, why don't you actually collaborate with people who like, put all their heart and work into it, who can actually really, make positive change. So that's where we're kind of moving more towards, is working and partnering with kind of industry leaders. We've had really amazing clients. Like we've produced socks for LinkedIn, Spotify, we transfer caps and stuff as well. So I think it's amazing to be able to work with such industry leaders and really change the way that they give to employees and clients and stuff like that as well. And so yeah, that's the kind of dream for Leiho, and for us to kind of continue growing the B2C side. I think we're still trying to figure out our product line, to be honest, and it's just, we don't necessarily want to be a clothing brand, but also we are everyday essentials, so that opens up that kind of like clothing aspect of it. So yeah, I think we're almost like a lifestyle kind of gifting brand, so there are a lot of personal everyday essentials that we want to kind of like add the impact into. So that's the kind of future for Leiho. future for me as an entrepreneur, like Leiho is just the beginning of it. I'm so excited to start loads of different things as well. I think when I started Leiho at the very like beginning, I was like, I'm never starting another product-based business again. But now I'm like, there's actually a few things that I want to disrupt in the kind of fashion industry. So we'll see there. But also I'd love to kind of fulfill my 9 to 10-year-old dream of, that kind of land of just peace, like detox, digital detox and stuff. So yeah, hopefully kind of figuring out what I can do in that area. And yeah, I guess diversifying it a little bit. I think I started my journey very young, so I still have so much that I want to learn and so many different businesses that I want to test if kind of funding permits. So yeah, I think it's just getting Leiho to a really good point where we're happy with it, and then after that going from there. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I will follow your next adventures for sure. Thank you so much for sharing your entrepreneurial journey with us today and your business tips as well, because I think I've covered that in another podcast, but more and more people are starting businesses today. It's a very large portion of the population, or people are thinking about it. So any piece of advice we can give in this area from people who have already done it and been through, the ups and downs, I think it's so valuable. So last question to you, because this podcast is called Shades of Life, as every guest bring their own color, vision and mission to it. So I always end it with the same question. If you were a color, what would it be and why?
Ooh, I love that. I would say like an orange, maybe. I would be an orange because I mean it's a fun, funky color. And I would say it's still a bit of a niche color, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like orange. I don't really know why. I'm not very good at like giving myself like talking about myself.
Creative, intuitive questions. So
Yeah, yes, the
yeah.
creativity. And it's just, yeah, I love that color. So yeah, I think probably orange.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joey, and thank you for joining me on the Shades of Life podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it was great.